Good evening, and welcome once again to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your friend and your host, James Donnelly. And tonight, we once again enter into the zone known as New Comics, bitches! So, let us begin. And I might do what may very well be a world exclusive for you guys. So keep an eye out as we go along in this week's reviews. So this week we had some strong comics, we had some weak comics, and we had some okay comics. And so let's start off with talking about, well, one of the weak ones. And that is, of course, Avengers vs. X-Men issue 2. Okay, now we remember that I talked about the first issue and how just awful it was. This because I'm refusing to kind of buy into the obvious roping in super duper marketing that Marvel's trying to do with this. I'd rather just buy Avengers shit and go see the movie when it comes out in a couple of weeks. I can't wait. I would rather. I have a friend, and I think I said this last time, I have a friend who buys the things with the digital download codes, and he gives me the download codes, and he keeps, because he gets everything. So, I mean, he works at the comic shop, at one of the comic shops, he gets everything, so, whatever. That's his thing, he wants to do that. So, anyway, so, Avengers vs. X-Men number 2. Now this issue was written by Jason Aaron, which is finally good to actually have an X-Men writer doing, the fact that he's the only one that's involved in of all of the, we got, Bendis, Brubaker, Fraction, Hickman, and Aaron. Aaron's the only guy who writes an X title, so, but, he has definitely got better rhythms going on for this book than what we saw in the first issue. John Romita Jr. is still doing the art. I know that, I used to totally worship at the throne of J.R. Jr., but his comics are just looking worse and worse. He's not getting better with age. Kick-Ass 2 looked shoddy and thrown together. This is looking equally bad. There are some panels where it's just like, oh, really? It looks like it was just, okay, here's a bunch of heroes. Look at them, fucker. It's just that, it's cheap. It just looks cheap. And, just basically Romita Jr. just phoning it in. Jason Aaron takes a little bit more serious tack than, I shouldn't say serious, but something that has a little bit more life to it than what we saw in the previous issue, because, obviously here we have more of, the big moments of combat. You have Colossus versus Red Hulk, you have Iron Man versus Magneto, you have, the Thing, Luke Cage versus Namor. You have, obviously, Cyclops against Cap, and a lot of other people are just kind of, all the other peripherals are just kind of getting lost in the shuffle here. And then, of course, the one that I'm really looking forward to, though, is Black Panther versus Storm, because obviously that's husband and wife. And maybe I just haven't been reading enough of Avengers lately, the main title, because it's not been good, but I don't even remember Black Panther even being on the roster. So, whatever. Um, but it has some nice moments. It has a lot nicer moments than in the first issue. Like when they talk about when Emma turns into Diamond form and punches Iron Man. There's a little there's a caption there. It says Diamond's diamond hardened fists hits multi-million-dollar armor, the most expensive punch in history. I mean, it's moments like that Aaron really shines, but unfortunately he doesn't get a lot of those. I mean, but there were, like I said, there's some cool moments, like the magnetic fastball special with Colossus all kind of juggernauted out now. What happened to Colossus's hair? Does he not have hair anymore? I mean, was it part of the Fear Itself thing? I don't really care. I almost don't. Because it's not worth getting excited about in this main title. I'm interested to see how it will affect the peripheral titles, and those have been, by and large, better. But this is, I mean, it's not as bad as the first one, but it's not good either. So this is about a 2.5 out of 5 for Avengers vs. X-Men #2. Still rooting for the Avengers. I still think that Scott's being a dick. Even though I kind of understand where he's coming from, obviously this involves something very personal to him, but I still think that, I still think Cap's right and Cyclops is wrong, even though Cyclops is my guy. So that bugs me. Anyway, so moving on to better things, is Wolverine and the X-Men, #9. Which is really it's a much better issue. Because we've got Chris Bachalo still continuing his art, and basically what we've got is this one planet that's out of the way of everything, kind of, is what basically all these alien beings are placing bets on what planet is going to be destroyed next by the Phoenix Force. And then we get to the we get back to the academy here, or the school, I should say, and we got Hank and Wolverine. They're X-Men and they're Avengers, so which side do they ultimately take? And that's the real question, is that ultimately, Beast being more of an optimistic creature, he believes that this can best be dealt with by stopping the Phoenix Force, by trying to just stop it out in space, rather than fighting amongst them, rather than fighting amongst themselves. So he's kind of taken the smart way out as far as having to choose sides, and has just volunteered to, okay, I'm going up into space and I'm going to see if I can stop it there. Well, Wolverine, he's more of a realist, and he's like, well, he has to do what he's going to have to do, and of course in Avengers vs. X-Men #2, he's about to kill Hope until she becomes all like Phoenixy and stops him. Of course, we have this moment where both Quentin and Rachel get telepathic seizures because of the Phoenix Force. And you have this conversation between, again, we've kind of seen the scene play out before, this conversation between Cap and Wolverine, but you also have this stuff that's going on the Shi'ar, where Gladiator has basically, he's understood that, well, you know what, these, the Phoenix Force is loose again. I'm going to save Earth, and Gladiator, I'm going to save my son. But he has this group in place, basically to stop, to do whatever they need to do to stop the Phoenix. There's these Death Commandos. Essentially, they're going to be going after Hope probably as well. So it's so the stakes are obviously high, and that's what's so disappointing about Avengers versus X-Men, because basically what the main focus there is okay, well, who's going to beat up who? Whereas in the peripheral titles, we get to see more of, okay, this is how it actually affects these people who are involved. They're talking about the end of the world, and not just maybe the ends of friendships or the ends of alliances. But I mean, billions of lives are being snuffed out instantaneously whenever it comes into the contact of the Phoenix Force. So this is a really strong issue. Wasn't great, obviously wasn't bad. Like I said, really strong. 4 out of 5 solid for Wolverine and the X-Men #9. Moving along now, we've got one of my favorite series, the only series that I get from IDW, which is Rocketeer Adventures Volume 2, number 2. Because we've got some great, some really nice work by Darwin Cook. Here we've got some really cool and fun stories by people like Walt Simonson and Paul Dini, and some other people that I don't know who they are. They've got some really terrific art. The story about Rocketeer fighting in combat, and against these huge like Nazi robot monsters, and it's just and that was that's a really cool little story there. You've got the Paul Dini story, which is where Betty gets she gets her break in as playing in a movie serial, which is Rocket Rustlers from Mars. And of course, Cliff finds a way to kind of screw that up, but not really, because everything here is done in a very lovable way. And you've got the story written by Simonson, and I swear to God, some of the art also has to be done by Simonson as well, because there's some very Simonson-esque moments here. And you've got this moment where he actually saves the life of Judy Garland. And it's just, it's such a Rocketeer. I'm really enamored of the original comic. I miss Dave Stevens, and I loved the first series of Rocketeer Adventures. I'm so glad they're continuing to do them, because it's wonderful to see all these different creators add their own tack onto the Rocketeer, which is ultimately, it's not per se a wholesome comic, but it has this very tender, it's a very tender throwback to this era, but it also can get, it can have a lot of depth, it can have a lot of weight, and have a lot of gravitas, as they say. So I mean, it's always full of terrific stories, full of terrific art, and there's never a boring read. There's never a dull read in this particular title. So I love Rocketeer Adventures. An easy 4.5 out of 5 for number 2 of Rocketeer Adventures, Volume 2. So we're going to take a bit of a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk more comics. So stay tuned.